Hello and welcome to Eye Openers. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. If you are watching this live, we're so excited to have you. If you are watching a replay, that is equally just fine because you get to stop, rewind, and hear all the amazing truth nuggets that my guest Kris is going to drop today. So either way, this is good for you, good for your business, good for opening your mind and seeing things differently, specifically leadership development, culture, business, different than the way that you saw it even earlier today. And that is invaluable, we know, in growing a business. So many people talk about the biggest shifts that they made were really in having a mentor say something to them. Like so many people I chat with can recall these really specific moments. And we'll see if this rings true for you too, Kris.
Yeah.
That, someone said something to them and it just changed everything. And that's what we try to do here on the show. So why we call it eye openers, though, for two reasons. We're working to create moments of insight for you. But really, I know for me, one of the most eye opening things is caffeine. And that helps me have insights every day. Now, it's afternoon here for me in Pacific time when we're recording this. So I have moved on to water because those of you guys who know me know that I don't drink caffeine after noon because of its eye-opening qualities, really. I mean, I use it all morning and then move into the afternoon. There's no eye closing, which is kind of essential for the next day.
Yeah.
So what about you, Kris? What are you drinking?
Oh, I am drinking Fever Tree. It's a premium Indian tonic water. So it's like got sparkly, but then it also has this complexity to it, which is how I like to have my drinks.
Very cool.
Yes.
I absolutely love sparkling water and have been a total junkie for it for a few years. And so I've never had that, though. I've never had the Indian.
I think it's a Parisian thing, to be honest with you. So it's like definitely like a Paris, crisp and fresh.
No, you're joining us live from Paris. So
Yes.
very exciting, very fun. And we'll find out how you get to be, this globe-trotting goddess who still runs this amazing growing company in a few minutes here. But let's give you like the introduction that you are owed, which is which I will try to run off now. Kris Sugatan is the founder and CEO of Sugatan.io, which is a leading ROI positive growth firm where you lead a team of performance advertising engineers that help growth stage e-commerce startups to scale to 1 million in monthly revenue. To date, Sugatan has generated $150 million in trackable revenue. I mean, those are not small numbers. That is something you should be incredibly proud of, first off. So, cheers to you for what you've created there. And you guys know that I have these little, pre-conversations with people to make sure I'm bringing you guys the best guests. But we covered that you have helped these organizations who are maybe just starting at like 50,000 a month in revenue. So
that's right.
How does that happen? I always ask my guests, like, please be willing to share a little bit of like the amazing thing that you do. How have you guys achieved it?
You know what? I actually found I tripped onto this niche that combined all of my strengths of creativity and analytical, logical, sequential thinking. And that was it. It just so happened to amalgamate inside social media advertising for e-commerce brands. It started with Facebook ads, and now we're doing TikTok. And Facebook comes with Instagram. So it's really those three platforms. And it's such a powerful advertising platform because you're basically matching and leveraging their algorithm with pushing reach by doing ad spend. And so literally we just create viral ads. That's what we do. And that kind of growth is possible. It is insane. I can't even believe that we do it. And it's so predictable at this point that when we take on e-commerce brands and when we audit them in the background, I can immediately tell, like, okay, we're going to scale you. And these founders are like, whatever, Kris, like you can't how long I've been working in this business for, and for you to say you guys can get it to that level, like I don't believe you. And then 4 months later, they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. And now it's here, it's been such a fun, interesting, fascinating journey because Brittany, it's not just like Sugatan is the business that we're growing. We're growing other businesses simultaneously. So it's challenge on challenge on challenge.
But it's also
And
impact on impact on impact, which is pretty cool.
correct. Yes, and it's working with multiple founders who have also I've watched, go through the ringer because that's a lot of what we do is you get challenged in multiple dimensions. So yeah, it's
Right.
crazy.
So, I mean, it must be a fun problem to have that your results are so good, they're almost not believable.
Yeah.
Does that mean that you guys really handpick who you work with? Like, is there a vetting process that happens?
Our vetting process is, I think, it's almost similar to like a VC investing, to be honest with you. We get, mine is actually getting their P&L sheet, their profit and loss sheet. We do everything else. We do the due diligence on their business backend numbers, the scalability of their inventory and their supply chain and logistics, auditing their accounts. I mean, it is a pretty comprehensive process and it's only because we really want to make sure that we can actually deliver on that scale and we have the highest possibility to do so. And so we do only work with a very limited amount of accounts, like maybe no more than 9 to 12 at a time. And because of that, we have a wait list at every given time, and we only accept applications about 3 times a year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but because the talent to do what we do is very specialized, and training takes about 8 months to develop the talent to be able to do this on their own. So yeah.
Okay, so you have truly reached like a capacity point because I know everybody's in the midst of a talent war right now, especially a really great engineer.
Yes.
So being able to find people and train them really just takes time. So that's what is creating the bottleneck for you. Okay.
100%. Yes, that's correct. That's exactly what's creating the bottleneck, and we're super transparent to the people that follow us and our methodology. We just let them know, uh, help us, bring great talent so that we can take on more accounts. We can take you on.
Mm.
So, and that's been, I think, one of the toughest challenges has been recruiting, identifying, hiring, training,
Mm.
and then retaining them after they've learned how to do it, because the normal thing is that they'll just go off and create their own business. They either create their own agency or they create their own e-commerce business,
Mm.
or they retire completely. That's some of the team members inside Sugatan have done that. They've just like gone off to Bali and do drum circles at the beach all day. So
Well, it's funny because like people, I think that we're seeing too with this generation, like there's a lifestyle component, right?
Mhm.
That people want to, and when you're good, right, you should be able to have things like that in your life. And so as
Exactly.
a business owner, it creates these really unique challenges of like, how much do I share? Because that's our IP of what makes us successful. But yet how much, we know that developing and investing in good employees is also what creates strong loyalty and retention. So it's a really tough balance. I mean, how are you guys
Yeah.
managing that?
We don't. So so I've actually, when we first came on to the Facebook advertising for e-commerce scene, which as an industry has really blown up in the last like 4 years. And I started Sugatan in 2018, right when that was bubbling up. So for me, it was also right timing. But at the time, a lot of people were like, "Oh, don't do that, Kris. There's so many Facebook advertising agencies. It's so saturated." And and I was like, I don't know. I'm just gonna go with my intuition here. I'm just gonna keep going. And like that's the thing I think all of us experience is like there's always those people that are gonna be like, no, don't do that. It's like too common, or they're always going to find a way to kind of discourage you from what needs to be a path that you have to explore.
Mm.
And at the time, the typical model for an agency was they were just going to take on everybody. They only did the ad buying part. They didn't actually produce creatives like the actual social media ads. And so their model was just charge a percentage of ad spend, and then that was it. And when we came on, I was a very much an independent thinker, and I was like, you know what? I know the potential of what this could do, and
Mhm.
I think we should really go for revenue share. And I changed the payment model so that we would capture a percentage of the revenue because we were generating ROI positive scale. Essentially, they were bootstrapping to 1 million per month in revenue, and I knew how valuable that was. And I say all of that because the team had to learn with me, and it's a very collaborative effort. It's not like it's something that I just came up with on my own. It was something we were discovering together.
Wow. Well, I just
And
highlight for everybody before you dive too much further into that. You guys, she's charging for the value that they create,
Mhm.
not necessarily the time they spend or the process that was established, right? This is a huge difference. And this is what I think a lot of like first stage to second stage businesses like need to like get there, right? But it takes time. It takes time. It like a lot of times in that first stage, you're starting to just learn how to create that value, right? So that's what you did with your first several.
Yes.
Once you got that predictability, right, it became easier probably for that.
Yeah, and again, the stage at which when I made the decision to do a percentage of revenue rather than percentage of spend, again, I got that resistance even from my own team. They were like, "You, nobody's going to say yes to this." That was the very first response that I got from my team. They're like, "No one's going to agree to it." And I said, I remember, and this is somebody on the team that had a lot of clout within Sugatan because he was a brilliant strategist, and he delivered on the results. He was incredibly intelligent, and so it wasn't like somebody from the outside saying no. He was a very credible person saying, you know what, Kris, I don't think you're going to be able to do it. And I was like, well, let's just see. And so then, the first sale, the thing was what I set up was a test phase. It was a period where we got to mutually qualify each other,
Mm.
and it was I think now looking back at it, it was the most intelligent move that I could make because it reduced all the barriers to saying no. Because it's hard to actually say, hey, I want a piece of your business. Of course, the first thing is like, great, everybody wants a piece of my business. What makes you worth it? And so I set up this 6-week test phase, and I said, if we just deliver this increment, we've pushed a needle for you. Then let's talk about it. And they're like, okay, we'll see. And that allowed, and for one, they were already integrating us into their ecosystem during
Right.
that
Right.
phase. And so then you start to build the relationship, and then we actually did deliver the result. So then by the end of that 6 weeks, it was such a no-brainer for them. It was like a yes. And when they did say yes,
Well,
I
it's not even,
remember,
it's like, let's just continue.
yeah, let's just
Right? And
continue it.
that's
Yeah,
what you
exactly.
hit on. See, like I love human behavior because that's my thing. And what you just hit on is you already established, you took away every single barrier to just starting the new habit, which is the hardest part. And then after 6
Yeah,
weeks, you're already so well ingrained and integrated into, like you said,
exactly.
that ecosystem that they'd actually have to change the behavior again to get rid of you, which is harder to do than just saying, let's continue.
Exactly. And then I remember the day that we got the first $100,000 monthly retainer, and that got deposited into the account. It was like like from the people that said, don't start a Facebook advertising agency, from the people that was like, you're crazy to think that you can actually scale these businesses to $1 million per month in revenue. How are we going to do that? I didn't even know at the time. And then when I said, I'm going to charge based on the value, because I know that that's what we're worth. And people said, no, they're only going to pay you $5,000 per month. That was literally what they told me. They're like, nobody's going to pay you more than $5,000 per month. And that was a very glorious, like moment where I was like, oh wow, we actually did it.
Mm.
And then a bunch of challenges came after that, obviously.
Yeah, that are inherent with being really good at what you do, and then your business is growing like wildfire. So
Yeah. Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what, this is amazing that you got here, but I would love to hear about, 3 years from now, if you and I were to
Yeah.
speak, what would you have accomplished that you'd be so excited to share?
An exit. So, tying into what is the next step of what is the next step beyond, well, that follows the principle of actually charging for our value.
Mm.
We started to get equity inside the businesses, but not, it's a representation of equity. It's stock options that then at the event of an exit, it gets accelerated into liquidity. And so we took that step in the last 12 months to actually also negotiate for stock options whenever we hit specific revenue milestones.
Wow.
And we only do that for those businesses who are intending to exit once they reach that $1 million to $1.5 million per month mark.
Okay.
And so the very first milestone for me is to get that first exit
Mhm.
that proves the business model that I'm reshaping and remolding. And this is really the maximum value of what we do, and then I feel like I've done my job as a CEO, like truly to maximize the value of what the team is doing for these businesses. And then, so that's like one, we're at the cusp of it. We're hoping that it's going to happen this year. By the end of this year. And then secondarily, it is to build a SaaS inside the e-commerce world. So many of the things are manual right now, and some of our in-house methodologies can be automated that will bring tremendous value to e-commerce brands. And so something that really just continues to help the founders in the e-commerce community. And then thirdly, I want to create an actual media company, or a very successful brand inside the e-commerce space. So I'm kind of just, it's either our own brand or a media company. Like that's really what I feel like in 3 years from now we're going to be doing. It's not the agency model. The agency model to me, it's not the right fit for within my values, because agencies typically just take on accounts. They say yes, they're there for the retainer. They don't really turn away business. And for us, I love the journey of working with other founders. I love developing talent. I love creating relationships. And then really I've just had to think through how to maximize that opportunity as fast as possible. And the only way was to actually get stock options inside the business. So yeah.
Right. Genius. I mean, in some ways you're describing like just an alternative VC in a sense. You're not injecting
That's
money,
exactly it.
or giving them a way to kind of bootstrap monetary injection, and then you stay on. So you have just kind of shifted this agency model on its head. And it actually allows you to make that impact that you're looking to make, and not just taking, but giving all of yourself that about business, how to run business, because essentially when you buy those stock options, you literally invest, and not just in a monetary sense, but you invest of yourself like good venture capital firms do. They bring advisory, they bring added value beyond the money.
Exactly. And I'm trying to figure out a way to like actually market that because before I even did this, I didn't know normal terminology. I didn't know what a VC was. And I remember working with the business lawyers and they're like, oh, that's like an alternate VC model. And I was like, I don't know what that means, but this is what I know. We're going to go down this path. Um, and I think that's something to the value that I want to give to your audience is like, be independent thinking. At least for me, I was such an independent thinker. And if you see the vision, if you see the path, like just keep going, even if you feel like you don't really know the answers, you don't really know the right way to do it. And the best way is to just put one foot in front of the other and figure it out and discover on your own because there's 1,000 ways to get to the same destination. There's so many different flavors.
Right. But so many of the things you're talking about here are really outside of the box of traditional ways people go about running this type of business. How do you stay in that thinking space? Like how do you find time to put this together? Like, do you have somebody you talk to that helps you think outside? Like, how do you do this?
Oh gosh, this is, I can't really answer that. I think I'm an overthinker. And I'm the kind of person that wakes up in the morning, will stare at the ceiling for like 30 minutes and just like literally figure things out in my mind.
Yeah.
And I remember, when I knew that I was going to start a business, I remember reaching out to my friends whose like parents had run and exited successful businesses. And I would ask them, can I just like talk to your dad? Can I talk to can I just like ask them some questions? And there was this one particular friend's dad who was so kind enough to just hop on the phone with me, didn't even know who I was. And he said, look, Kris, he's like, I can give you the template. I can tell you the template of how to create a successful business. But he was like, there's the one piece, though, that I can't teach you. And he's like, and that really is to follow your intuition.
Mm.
And he was like, that is the one thing that I have seen for myself and for other of my colleagues who have been very successful. They follow their intuition. And I'm such a very hyper intellectual person. I was like, what is the intuition even? Like how is it so arbitrary? You're saying that it's like there's no, for me, I like to see things sequentially. I like to see the path right in front of me. And I was like, the intuition thing just kind of like there's no way that fits into this like sequential step-by-step path that I want to take. But like that's really been it. I think that more than anything I've learned to develop my intuition and to learn when I am acting out of fear or if it just to discern between like it's something I'm afraid of and I'm making a decision out of like something I feel really scared about, or if it's actually my intuition really screaming at me and saying, no, you got to go this way.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, that's really it, and I think I got lucky. And I think everybody can get lucky though, because it starts with like just first of all believing that the opportunity is there for you, because if you don't believe that, then you're always going to convince yourself that it's not there and that you're always going to have this backup plan to go to just in case things don't work out. And for me, I made the decision very early on, there is no backup plan. I'm going to make this work no matter what, even when it gets really hard. And yeah, and then I just followed my intuition throughout. Yeah.
I just did another episode about that this can't fail. And we were talking about that same kind of concept that if you can have the burn the ships, like burn the boats kind of mindset of like, this has to work because there's no other option for us. It takes you to a place in your mind that it allows you to just show up and execute differently. So let's talk about some of that mindset stuff, because you bring up intuition, which I agree with you is every entrepreneur I meet that feels like they're succeeding, that's a component of it. It is really this self-belief and the courage to move through even when it feels scary, but
Yeah.
also discerning between like fear because this isn't right or just fear because it's new and I'm nervous. What kind of exercises do you use? Like what practices or strategies help you either get into that mindset or stay into it? You know, I know you can't tell us how intuition comes through you, but how do
Yeah.
you tap in, and how do you maybe use that process of discernment?
I think that it really just depends. I think that there's this thing where a lot of entrepreneurs say, you know, we have the same amount of time, right? We have 24 hours.
Mhm,
I kind of take it a little bit further than that. It's the amount of energy that we can expend is the
mhm,
same. So the amount of energy that I spend on focusing on like one specific thing is actually an opportunity cost in focusing on something else.
mhm,
And I really make decisions based on compounding. So where I put my energy, and that translates into time, is things that compound on itself over time, and
mhm,
that helps me make the decision in terms of like, because I remember early on, I used to get really upset when something didn't happen the way that I wanted it to happen. And over time, I learned that if I'm reacting rather than responding, then that's a good way of me discerning between, you know, taking in somebody who's really trying to take my focus away from the thing that I know actually intuitively I know we need to go there instead.
mhm,
And that's really been some of the things that go through my own mind. Am I reacting? You know, basically, like, because I think when we're dealing with humans, like we can trigger each other, you know?
mhm,
Um, and there's a lot of miscommunication, there's a lot of misunderstanding, there's a lot of values misalignment sometimes too. And so I think a lot of times we can find ourselves like reacting. And so then it's like if I were to just respond, how would I then respond?
mhm,
And and then leading that way, if that makes any sense, and that ties into, I think, discerning between, is it fear or is it fear, or is it, am I making a decision out of fear, am I making a decision out of like confidence and going into this direction? And it all kind of ties into that, but that takes practice, to be honest with you,
mhm.
and it takes practice to get to that level, to be quite frank. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Brittany, what about you? Like, I'm curious if you had a similar sort of journey too, and into
Completely, completely. So I find that you have to it's a lot like exercise. I make so many fitness analogies because there's only one way to being more fit. Can't buy your way there. You know, you gotta earn it. And so each time you lean into that edge of your comfort, each time you're willing to like consider taking a risk, the more that you sit in that position of like trying to figure out, is this fear, is it trying to stop me, or is this the right thing? It's just a little bit nerve wracking. You actually you grow your comfort zone. So
that's
by through practice, right? That's those same things that were scary for you or maybe challenging to try to figure out a year or two ago are no longer the case. A lot of people experience this with in a service company with a price increase. There's so many things that come up, and I'm sure as you switched your pricing model, you experienced this, like, are we worth it? So value-based deservingness, our old money stories coming up about how much we should be earning, right? A lot of this comes up more for women, but doesn't exclude anybody.
yeah,
Um, all have a money story that will pop up in fun ways to pay attention
yeah,
to. So yeah, I have definitely been there time and time again. And early on in my career, because I'm a psychologist by training, I had a tremendous amount of naysayers. You can't do that. Like, we charge by the hour, actually the 50-minute hour, and insurance tells us what we're worth and all of these things. And I was like, that is the worst, most broken model ever. And that's not a,
absolutely.
that's just like trading time for money, and someone else is making all the rules. You're just like a glorified self-employed person instead of like charging. I know like when someone hires me, the changes that happen in their business. And so therefore now I have a predictable value that I can bring to an organization. And now my pricing is reflective of that. And I
Yeah.
also have a similar model of equity when it makes sense. So that's cool. We didn't know this about each other, I promise, until we like it's that universe attracting you to people who can push you on that edge. So I agree with you. There's this like place of intuition, but that's where you start to kind of have ideas that are already in your zone of genius.
Yeah.
So it's really the other parts that are totally within your control, because people think like, oh, it's the idea. I don't know if I have ideas. You have ideas all the time about things that you're an expert in. Just like slow down enough, pay attention, or you're probably talking about them over the lunch hour or water cooler or whatever. If only
Yeah.
we could do this, or this would be better. Why doesn't the boss see this? But it's actually the execution that is the real valuable component. Lots of people have ideas. Can you execute on it? And how much value can you really deliver from that? That makes a huge difference. And it sounds like
Yes.
you guys are really doing that. So
Yeah.
yes, I've had similar experiences, and I've been with a lot of clients in that position too, trying to figure that part out.
Yeah.
Um, what would you say, so along these same lines, like what would you say are the kind of breakthroughs that you've had that changed the way that you either lead within your business or show up as within your industry? Like did you have these like insight moments where it was like, oh my gosh, I can't not unsee that, you know?
Well, actually, I'm a very backwards person. Like, I've been so independent that I had a very hard time reaching out for people for help. So when you asked, did I have a mentor? Did I go to somebody? I actually didn't. I very much led with my own volition and intuition and momentum, and really just looking around and being like, what can I leverage to take us to the next step? And I always equate it to, and I forgot where I got this analogy from, but it stuck to me over the years. It's like you're figuring out how to get from New York to California in your car, and it's like pitch black, and you just have your headlights that is leading you, but then you can only see about 10 feet ahead of you at a time. And as you get to that next 10 feet, then the next 10 feet kind of show up to you, and then you're just like iterating as you go along. And that's exactly how it's been. But at some point, I was like, there's something seriously wrong with me, that I feel like I cannot ask for help. I feel like it's a burden. I feel like nobody, like, and it's funny because I would go through these thought exercises when I would talk to my sister about it or anybody in my close circle, and they would be like,
Mhm.
but do you feel like somebody is burdening you when you give somebody for help? When you give help to somebody, I'm like, no, I love it. And he's like, so then why can't you think that people would love to help you? And it was the beginning of, I would say, a huge ego death that I had to overcome. Now, let me take a step back, because this was actually the ultimate bottleneck inside Sugatan not growing even more. I became very self protective, and I didn't really know how to let people in to help me. And I became very, and I'm, going to admit this openly. I became very egotistical, because I was like, I did this, I was the architect around this. It was my brain child, and I remember wanting to control everything. And, I wanted to control my own time, and I became so obsessed with like every single part of my day had to maximize the opportunities, that I would actually shut down people and say, I can't see the value of my giving you my time, so I'm not going to give you my time. So now you have to adapt to like the way that it was like, so in hindsight, oh my gosh, like I would have hated myself if I like encountered myself in that kind of situation. But I really, at that time, thought I was doing the best for the business and
Mhm.
for the people, because we went from we went from like 9 people to 80 people in 1 year. And so I really felt like I had to like protect the people. So I thought that I was doing the right thing. And but then I think like business teaches you to like confront yourself, because the business, once it hits a limitation, it's because you have you're limiting it. It's something about yourself.
Mhm.
And I had to go through this massive like ego death, to really come back to a humble state, to come back to being grateful, to come back to just knowing that I didn't do this. Everybody
Mhm.
together collectively, we did it. And now I'm so much more open that I don't feel like I need to control everything. And now I feel like I'm in a state of flow. And that has been, I think, the biggest transformation, um, that I'm proud to have kind of like gone through that gauntlet. And that, really, only you can experience it to know how insane of a journey it has been inside, and then it gets reflected in your business. Yeah.
Right, right. So much of that is true in personal, right, for personal development, and then this professional self too. That if you're aware enough to realize that you are creating whatever it is that's showing up, and take the time to like really sit with that, hold the mirror up, and figure out like what does this mean, and how do I need to evolve? Like how do I need to change the way I'm showing up to make this different. That's really powerful. But you almost have to kind of like hit that rock bottom place of like, this is not working anymore and something needs to work because this is going to explode. That
Yeah.
you almost like need that kind of pressure on you to make these big changes, because you're talking about big behavior changes, and mindset changes also in the way that you're showing up. I have a past interview I did with a finance person who is managing a few $1 billion in assets. And he talks about, he's like, no, they don't work for me. I work for them. My job as this founder, as this leader, is to make sure that is to help them self actualize, to rise to their greatest level of potential and development through the resources I can provide for them.
Yes.
And so he literally like shifted that on its head, is like, no, I work for these people. And when they're good, then everything else is good. And that really stuck with me. And a lot of people commented on that episode because I think it gave people that moment of insight, but it was really different. It was disruptive to the way we think about top-down leadership, or the
100%.
the person at the top with their name on the organization. Like it has to reach this kind of inflection point in order to get to that next level of, okay, here's this pain, here's this bottleneck I've created, here's this process that is like not serving us anymore. It needs to shift to reach to that next level of growth.
Yeah, 100%. I love that. I love that.
Yeah, I'll be happy to share that with everybody too in the notes. That the Roy Ballantyne episode's really good, for that reason alone. And he has definitely, lived more lifetimes than us in business years.
Yeah.
So now you've moved through some of those things. What would you identify as maybe a weakness that's holding you guys back now? Because one thing we know as we start to move into this development process is, okay, here's how I'm holding myself back now, and I try to evolve past that and learn it and grow. And then you start to see more and more things like, oh my gosh, here are these other shortcomings. What do you feel like you guys are working on right now to help you break through?
Well, I think one of the toughest lessons was, the because I built such a unique model, it meant that the way that a typical org chart or organizational design, I had to think about it. I had to also customize it, but I didn't know that in the very beginning. I thought that, you have your head of ops, and so you bring in or you have somebody be a COO and all good. But I didn't really think through on how it needed to serve the way that we were doing business. And our most biggest weakness was really finally, and I just fixed it this year, um, 4 years into Sugatan, I learned that the only way that somebody can actually run operations is they need to rise up from the performance team who's actually doing the performance advertising, and because that's our product. Our product is our scaling model
Mm.
and methodology. And what I did was I brought in, oh, there's a COO that has no experience doing that, and yet they have all the authority in, like, the hiring and the budget and and it's kind of like if you built your watch and that was your product, but then you bring somebody in who doesn't even know how the watch was designed or why these gears, what's the function of this gear, and that was really difficult, was to find a head of operations who could actually um, who actually understood the product. And the only way for us was to actually move somebody up from within the performance team. And I
Oh,
got very lucky that I was able to identify that person. She's the best people manager inside Sugatan. And I would say that that was the biggest weakness, is that you find you kind of find another model and you try to squeeze it into your business without even thinking about how to customize it or whether it actually fits into your business. So now I do a lot of that, and we're strengthening ourselves in that area for sure. So
beautiful. Well, thank you
yeah.
for being so willing to go there. You guys, I handpick these people. I make sure that they are willing to be open with us because I don't want another like fake interview of like everything's rosy and shiny and it's great. Like this is what true entrepreneurship looks like. It
Yeah.
has, peaks, but also many valleys and in difficult times and moments where you're crying on the floor and you want to give it all up. But when you
Yeah.
move through that, it's a beautiful thing and you grow in the process. So I really, really appreciate your honesty and your candidness here.
Yeah.
Kris, how can people find you? I mean, we know you have a wait list, but if people want to learn more about you and what you do, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Um, you know, I think that there's two communities. There's a private Facebook group, and then there's my Twitter that I just am starting to share what we're doing. Um, and those are the two places that they can follow me. And just to really, it's really, if you have an e-commerce brand, or if you're really interested in social media advertising, like your business has to do it. Um, I share a lot of our methodology. I really believe that there's so much room for everybody to be successful. So I don't really hold the secrets in. It is for everybody to utilize and to leverage, because I think we all need all the help that we can get.
Awesome. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. And thank you guys for tuning in and listening. I love to hear what you found most valuable. So whether you're watching this on LinkedIn, YouTube, or Spotify, or on my website, there are ways for you to leave a comment and let me know what was an eye-opening moment for you and what you were going to take and run with to grow your business. Thank you, Kris, for joining us. It has really been a pleasure. Lots of insights for me as well, and fun to just riff with you. Okay,
Thank
guys,
you, Brittany.
until next time, have a wonderful week.